In the heart of France. On remote, dark roads. Events occurred that no human imagination could have imagined. The story of an ordinary bus driver, whose journey turned into a terrifying nightmare. Between reality and illusion. Between our known world and another dark, haunted, and mysterious world. Did he really see a ghost? Or was it all just a figment of his imagination? The answer you'll find out in this terrifying video. I'm William, 30 years old, and I live alone in a small town in the south of France. My life was ordinary, sometimes even boring, but this calm gave me a sense of security, a fragile security, but enough to make me feel okay. I've worked in many jobs, but recently decided to make a radical change in my career path. Today, I'm embarking on my first experience as a long-distance bus driver. The bus I was assigned was new, clean, and its engine made a sound that made me feel completely in control, as if I was in control. I saw this job as an opportunity to discover new cities, strange roads, and faces I'd never met before. My first destination was a city about 5 hours away from my hometown by car. It was an area I'd never set foot in, and that left me feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. On the day of the trip, I woke up at 4 a.m. I left my house, bought my usual coffee from a nearby cafe, and then began walking through the deserted streets. All I could hear was my footsteps and the whispers of the wind through the alleys. The entire city was asleep, as if I were the only one awake in a dead world. I arrived at the bus station at 5:15. The bus was waiting for me, its lights silently lit, like a giant, watchful entity. I greeted the official, who gave me the passenger list, 16 people, mostly elderly, plus 2 young women. The passengers began to arrive slowly. Their faces showed their excitement for the journey. I started the engine. I love the sound of it. We were headed to Sainte Marguerite, a small town nestled in the woods, famous for its natural scenery and stifling tranquility. But inside, I wondered, why had they chosen this particular town? It wasn't a popular tourist destination, and there weren't many activities. Maybe all they wanted was to escape the noise. I left on time. It was cold, and clouds were beginning to cover the sky, gradually obscuring the sun. At the beginning of the journey, I was silent, focused on driving, the only sound being the tires screeching on the asphalt. The passengers were also silent, some dozing off, others staring out the windows wordlessly. As I drove, a thought crept into my mind. This was the first time I'd ever been outside the city, responsible for the lives of several people. It was a heavy responsibility. The road ahead was long, and I had to remain composed. Although I was trying to maintain my composure, a strange feeling began to tighten in my chest. It wasn't real fear, but something more like anxiety, a slight tension whose source I couldn't quite figure out. As time passed, mountains began to appear on the horizon, and the landscape changed. The roads swerved between dense forests, towering trees, and the clouds grew thicker. I felt as if I was immersed in another world. A calm world, but not entirely normal. There was something about it, something difficult to describe in words. At that moment, there was nothing to fear, everything seemed normal. Or so I convinced myself. The road was quiet, surrounded by forest on both sides, and the trees stirred in the wind like distant whispers echoing in space. I was concentrating on driving. Most of my passengers were fast asleep, and the radio was off because I wanted to drive in complete silence. The air was getting colder, and the clouds were gathering, and it was as if something was floating in the air, not rain, but a heavy feeling weighing on the soul for no apparent reason. How can the same place become unexplainably difficult to breathe? I was driving at a moderate speed, and there was no sign of any danger approaching. Suddenly, without warning, something emerged from the trees and pulled the road ahead of me. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The bus shook violently, and I heard a single scream from one of the passengers, who had woken up from the shock. My heart began to pound, and my hands were drenched with sweat on the steering wheel. The bus stopped, and I quickly put on my jacket and got out to investigate. The cold was biting, and the wind was howling. I walked to the front of the bus and found the body, but it wasn't an ordinary animal, nor was it ordinary. It was medium-sized, resembling a dog, but its skin was black and cracked in places, as if fire had consumed its limbs. Its eyes were large and open, oozing a thick green substance, and its claws were very long, like sharp knives. At that moment, I froze, unable to move. I looked at it, a deep tremor in my chest. This isn't an animal of this world, impossible. I heard the bus door open, and an elderly man emerged from the passengers. Is everything okay? What happened to us? He approached me, looked at the body, and his face gradually began to change. This isn't normal. As long as I've been coming this way, I've never seen anything like this. I said to him in a subdued voice, "We need to remove it from the road." With difficulty, we mustered our courage and carried the body to the side of the road near an abandoned compound containing dumpsters. The sight was disgusting, but we had no choice. We placed it in a large black bag, avoiding direct contact due to the stench, reminiscent of burnt, rotting flesh. After that, I returned to the bus, my eyes constantly scanning the side mirrors, as if anticipating something that might reappear from the forest. I got behind the wheel and said to the passengers, "Just a small animal, that's it." I got back in the car, and the road was calm again, but inside, William was tense, because something out of the ordinary had happened, and because that animal was no coincidence. From that moment, I knew this trip would not be ordinary. It was nearly 3 a.m. The forest surrounded the road on all sides, and the darkness was endless. Only the bus light cut through the darkness, amidst a heavy silence that hung over the air. All the passengers were asleep, except for 3 of them, who were still awake, talking in low voices in the middle seats. As for me, I drove silently, like a machine, but inside, something was troubling me. A strange sensation began to creep in. My eyelids began to feel heavy, and fatigue slowly crept into my head. But suddenly, I saw them. In front of the bus, directly on the road, they were slowly advancing, 6 men, all wearing white robes, passing amidst the bus light, carrying a body wrapped in a white shroud. Naturally, I stopped the bus. The road wasn't wide, and I was afraid to get too close to them or that they would be hurt by the lights. I felt like I was standing at a funeral, and it was inappropriate to continue driving as if nothing had happened. I stood respectfully, watching them walk very slowly. Suddenly, a passenger approached me. He was a young man sitting directly behind me and asked in surprise, "What are you doing? Why did you stop?" I answered calmly, "Can't you see? There are 6 men mourning a dead person. We have to respect them." He responded sarcastically, raising his eyebrows. "What? Who do you see? The road is completely empty. No men, no dead person, nothing. Please, move, it's getting late." I froze. I looked back through the windshield. Nothing. The road was completely empty, no sign of anyone, no men, no shadows, no shroud, nothing at all. I looked quickly in the side mirror, my heart pounding, my eyes blinking unconsciously. How? What did I see? Was I imagining things? Or was something unnatural forming in front of me to convey a message? I didn't answer the young man. I just slowly pressed the gas pedal, and the bus started moving again. But my mind stayed there, in that scene. Did this mean I was starting to lose my mind? Or was something trying to communicate with me? Was this just the beginning? Time passed, but the scene didn't go away. It remained embedded in my mind, refusing to leave. From that moment on, I doubted myself for the first time during this trip. Would I make it to the end? Or would I even make it? That night, we were halfway there, and the night was dark and cold. The road was long, and silence surrounded us on all sides, and the passengers began to fall asleep one by one. As I drove, signs of fatigue began to show on me. My head was getting heavy, and my eyelids were about to close on their own. I was about to fall asleep while driving. I calmly stopped the bus and turned to Brian, my shift mate, and said, "Brian, please. I'm exhausted, I can't go on anymore. You go on, and I'll go rest in the small kitchen at the back of the bus." He smiled and said, "No problem. I left your dinner there. There are cookies, juice, and a small sandwich. Take your time." I walked to the back of the bus, entered the rest area, and turned on a dim light. I found the sandwich and ate it quickly. The small bottle of juice and a wrapped cookie remained. I opened the biscuit, took a bite, and as soon as I started chewing, I felt something strange. It wasn't the usual softness of a biscuit. Something sticky, moving, sliding into my mouth. I stopped chewing, put my hand over my mouth, and took out what was inside, to my shock. It was full of worms, moving alive before my eyes. My heart started beating rapidly, and my eyes widened in alarm. I thought, maybe the biscuit is old, past its use-by date. I grabbed the wrapper to make sure. No. It was still fresh. Thoughts started creeping into my head, but I held on to some patience. I told myself, I'll have to drink some juice to take away this disgusting taste. I took the first sip, and it tasted very strange, not fruity, but bitter, hot, and with an iron-like flavor. I spat it out quickly. I looked at what came out of my mouth. It was blood. Bright red blood. The bottle still said, natural apple juice. But what I drank was blood. My knees shook, and I no longer knew whether I was imagining things or whether something evil was trying to terrorize me. I turned back to Brian, nervous. "Brian, the juice has blood in it. And the biscuits have worms in them. Are you kidding me or what?" He looked at me, his face turning serious. "William, are you okay? I brought those things from the station myself. I drank a little of the juice, too." He took the bottle from my hand, opened it, and drank from it. Nothing happened. He just laughed and said, "Regular juice, what's wrong?" I grabbed another biscuit. I opened it, smelled it, and tasted it. Normal. No worms, no strange taste. I started to feel like I was choking. Not because of what had happened, but because my mind began to question everything. What had I seen? What had I done? Who among us lives in reality? I fell silent, returned to my seat in the back, closed the door behind me, and sat in silence. For the first time, I felt something touching my mind, something trying to reach me from within. It wasn't just an accident, nor a coincidence. This was the beginning of something dark. That night, after what happened to me with the biscuits and juice, I returned to my seat at the back of the bus, pulled back the curtain, and sat in silence. My mind was boiling, and fatigue was eating away at me from all sides, so much so that I didn't even realize how I'd fallen asleep. But sleep wasn't a rest. It was the beginning of true terror. I saw myself walking down a deserted road. A long road, with no lights, no buildings, just dead trees and a colorless sky. I was wearing the same clothes, walking alone. No sound, no smell, just a cold wind that scratched my face like knives. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a bus engine coming from behind me. I turned around. It was coming at breakneck speed. I couldn't escape. It crashed into me. I didn't feel pain, but I felt my body falling to the ground, my eyes slumping with the fall. I was looking up at the sky. Suddenly, an entity appeared above my head. Neither human, neither animal. A dark face, its eyes completely black, its mouth open, dripping with a sticky black fluid. It started laughing, and its sound was like the sound of broken iron. It grabbed me by the feet, the same way Brian and I had pulled out that strange creature that had been hit by the bus. It started dragging me. A dumpster appeared in the middle of the road. The same shape, the same color, the same smell as where we had dumped that animal. Then it threw me into the dumpster. And I kept falling, and falling, without end. The darkness was swallowing me, and the echo of the creature's laughter followed me. It felt like something was piercing my heart, slowly squeezing it. And suddenly, I woke up. I wanted to scream. And I was screaming. My eyes were open, breathing rapidly. The passengers stared at me, and Brian came running. William. William. What's wrong? You were dreaming. You're okay. I didn't answer. I remained silent, clutching my chest. Because the horror didn't stay in the dream. Because the horror didn't stay in the dream. It stayed with me. What was that entity? And what was the connection between the dream, the animal I'd run over, and the way I'd been dragged in the dream? And what was that thing doing in my world? It all started out as a coincidence. But now it's turning into a curse. After that terrifying nightmare, all I wanted was to end the journey and leave. I swapped places with Brian and got back behind the wheel. The night was still long, and everything was silent. The passengers were asleep, and Brian had gone to rest. And I was driving, in the middle of the forest, in the thick darkness. I was trying to stay alert. But suddenly, the bus stopped by itself. The sound of breaking metal echoed in the air, then silence fell as the engine shut off, leaving only the sound of a tire leaking. The bus swerved to the side of the road. Brian and I got out, opened the hood, and began examining the fault. We checked, we tested, we accelerated. But the problem was serious. It wasn't just a coincidence. The fault was complex, as if it were deliberate. Brian scratched his head and said, "William, this fault can only be fixed by a professional mechanic." It was 4 in the morning. No cars, no taxis, nothing. We decided to let the passengers off the bus. We explained the situation to them and asked them to be patient until we found a way to transport them. We were stuck in a deserted place, between 2 mountains, surrounded by forest, and the cold was penetrating even to the bones. Luckily, an old bus arrived, apparently operating on long-distance routes. It stopped, and the driver got out. A tall man, his face barely visible in the darkness. I said to him, "Sir, I'm sorry, our bus has broken down, and the passengers need to get there." He replied in a low voice, "Your passengers are welcome, there's still room on the bus." The bus contained only 4 passengers. Everyone was silent, no one looking at anyone. I felt uneasy, but I had no choice. The passengers boarded, and I hoped everything would go smoothly. Brian told me, "I'll go get a mechanic, I'll be back at daybreak. Stay here, and take care of yourself." And I was left alone, in the middle of nowhere, with a broken down bus, and the night, and the silence. I tried to laugh at myself. It's just a coincidence. A lot of buses break down. But my heart didn't believe me. I started hearing the wind blowing through the trees, and the sound of something moving in the distance, like feet slowly dragging dirt. I turned on my flashlight. I went out to look for the source of the sound. But I found no one. I went back to the bus. I closed the door and sat down to check my phone. No coverage. No internet. Nothing. 20 minutes passed. Until I heard a soft knock on the bus door from outside. Slowly. As if it were a non-human hand. I approached to check. But the sound stopped. I opened the door. And found no one. I went back inside, closed the door, my heart pounding. At that moment, I looked in the rearview mirror. And saw a person sitting in the back seats, even though the bus was empty. I sat there, my blood freezing. I looked in the mirror. There was someone sitting in the back of the bus. I turned around slowly. I didn't hear a door open, nor any movement. And yet, there he was, sitting quietly. His head tilted to one side, his eyes staring straight at me. I wasn't lying to myself. I felt my legs would give way with terror. Maybe, I said, maybe this was just the aftermath of last night's nightmare. I leaned closer to make sure. I froze. In the back seat, there was a child. He was little, no more than 10 years old. He was wearing pajamas, and he was laughing a low, frightening laugh. I asked him, "Son, who let you in here? How did you get in?" He didn't answer me. He continued to stare. Then he said in a soft voice, "I want to play." I thought maybe one of the children got lost while getting off. I approached him cautiously. But before I reached him, the bus lights went out completely. Pitch black. Nothing to be seen. I quickly turned on my phone's flashlight. But the child was gone. The seat was empty. I went back to my seat. My throat dry. I wanted to call Brian. But no network, no coverage, nothing. Suddenly, strange sounds began to fill the place. Children's laughter. The clatter of pots. And small toys passing by the bus. I looked out the window. And saw dozens of children playing in the darkness. Turning around, running, laughing. But their faces weren't human. They were white and featureless. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Like masks of solid clay. Then, a voice came from behind me.
"Why did you kill our son?"
I turned around suddenly. It was him. The one I had seen a moment ago. But his face had changed. He looked like a lump of melting wax. His skin was flowing, his eyes were large and lidless. And his mouth was open from chin to neck. Then he transformed in front of me. He became a tall man. Wearing a white robe, his face upturned. Behind him were a large group of people. All dressed in white. Their faces identical. Lifeless. He said in a low voice that still made my ears tremble.
"Our son is that animal you hit on the road. He was on a mission, and you wanted to wipe him out."
I stammered and said, "What?" He was just an animal. He took a step closer and said in a deep voice that pierced my chest,
"He was our son, and he was one of us. And now, we will take revenge."
It began to approach. So I rushed toward the bus door. But it didn't open. It was being pulled from the outside. Then it opened by itself. I ran out. Into the darkness of the forest. With the children behind me. Their laughter turning into bitter crying. And with every step I took, the ground felt colder beneath my feet. I ran through the trees. Repeating to myself, "William, what brings you here? How did ghosts get into your life?" Here the story stopped. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. I ran aimlessly, fighting the wind and escaping from the voices chasing me. From nightmares emerging from the darkness of desolation. There was no difference between sweat and tears, between heat and cold. Until I saw a light ahead. A car headlight. I stopped, my eyes blurred, searching this nightmare for a touch of reality. And there he was. Kareem. Standing beside the car, he and another man came. Kareem said, "William? What's wrong? What happened?" I stood, breathing hard, trying to find my voice in my throat, looking at him and saying, There are children, and a man attacked me. They said I killed their son." My voice trembled, like a terrified little child in a cave. Kareem laughed loudly as he looked at the mechanic. "Oh, forget him, he's just a poor man hallucinating from exhaustion." The mechanic laughed, but I couldn't help laughing. We got back on the bus, and here came the shock. The bus was empty. There were no children, no men with melted faces, no blood, no noise. Even the sound of the bus returned to normal. I looked for a trace, a sign, but there was nothing. It was as if everything had been a dream, a dark nightmare. Kareem told me, "Rest, dream a little. The night and the cold do things like that." But my mind refused. My heart was still pounding, and the images were still etched in my vision. We arrived in the big city, and I was silent the whole way. The next day, I handed in my resignation. I didn't give a clear reason, but in my heart I knew I had entered a world that didn't belong to us. I made an appointment with a psychiatrist. I told him everything. From the first trip. From the strange animal. From the ghosts that attacked me. From the juice that turned to blood. And the biscuits that were full of worms. The doctor remained silent, writing in his notebook. When I finished, he looked at me and said, "William, that night, I struck and killed a creature. But it wasn't an ordinary creature. It was a child of the ghosts. They have tribes and laws, and you violated them." I froze. I tried to understand his words and asked, "Was all this real?" He answered, "The human mind is capable of seeing things. But there are other dimensions. In them are beings that don't want to be revealed. And you opened a door you weren't supposed to open." I asked, "Will they come back?" He looked at me with stern eyes. "If you don't pray and fortify yourself, they won't just come back. They'll take you." Since that day, my city and my life changed. And every night I wake up to the same nightmare. A man with a melted face grabs my leg and says, "Why did you kill our son?" I'm William. I was just a bus driver. And today, I've become a witness to a world from which many don't survive, with their minds. The end? Maybe not. Maybe this is just the beginning of a new nightmare. This is the story of William, a bus driver who finds himself caught in the middle of events he couldn't have imagined, even in his worst nightmares. If you like the story, don't forget to support us with the like button and share the video with your friends who love psychological horror. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Subscribe now and activate the bell button to receive all upcoming stories first. See you in the next story, if you dare.